What's up guys, Hungrybox here, and I'm going to be reviewing one of these articles that got posted about Super Smash Bros. Melee right after Genesis finished. And I read a different article that was pretty horrible in a recent video, so I'm hoping this one is a little better. It's titled, "Melee has dominated the Smash esports scene for nearly 2 decades, its reign may be over." And now, even from the title alone, I can tell you it's a little bit off kilter, only because I'm not sure if dominated is the right word. It's always shared the spotlight, I feel, with every other relevant Smash game, i.e. every new title that Nintendo has put out. So we'll see what this is. So going into it, start of the Super Smash Bros. Melee season is marked with Genesis, but during this year's Genesis, the 19-year-old game, released in 2001, didn't see the viewership and attention it has in years past. Now, it's interesting to say that because, you know, even with a drop in viewership, it still was over 100K. Genesis 7 topped out at around 105,000 viewers, down 69,000 viewers from 2019, which is fine to say. I think that you're not going to get the exact same numbers for your tournaments every single time. I'm not sure if he's referring just to Melee or, you know, just from Ultimate in general too. What I do know for a fact is that Genesis last year was the really first big super major for Ultimate, and Melee was the opening act for that. So tons of people were already tuning in because they wanted to watch that, and I'm pretty sure that hype of having a new Smash release that recently helped with that viewership. And even though Melee's viewership was down, that means that Ultimate's viewership was also way more down. So it's important to keep that in mind. It was a busy Sunday with the opening weekend of the Call of Duty League and the LCS taking place, as well as the Grammys, and of course Kobe's death, which happened the morning of Top 8 of Genesis. Put in perspective, last year's Genesis 6, which took place in February during the Super Bowl, reached a peak of 174K. Now, again, it does conflict with the viewership, but to say that a sporting event should have that much crossover with a Smash event, I'm sure there's some, but I don't think it's as big as you might realize. I really do think it was the impetus, the fact that there was a new Smash game. That hype alone, and the amount of hype releasing Ultimate, which is now, I'm pretty sure, the best-selling fighting game of all time, that really pushed the viewership to the roof. So I'm taking that with a bit of a grain of salt. There are some pragmatic reasons why Melee may be on the outs. There's a newer, shinier-looking Smash game. Well, there was Smash 4 also. On an incredibly popular system, that's true. The Switch is much more popular than the Wii U. Ultimate, which was released roughly a year ago, has been a massive success for Nintendo. Best-selling fighting game of all time, 50.5 million copies. Melee, only 7.4 million copies in the wild, which are only available on the second-hand market. Mind you that the Switch with Ultimate is far more accessible. Back in the day, sure, it was GameCube with a console and a disc. We had to physically buy a disc. You had to physically buy, all of your games back then. Now you can sort of just down them onto your Switch. It's a lot more easier to obtain. Also, I think in general, because esports has grown and gaming as an entire industry has grown, this is kind of expected. Double is to me expected, and it's still nothing to scoff at that Melee sold over 7 million. A new Smash game, not to mention the massive success and accessibility of newer free-to-play games like Fortnite, could make 2020 the start of Melee's sunset into retirement. There's been free-to-play games for a while. I don't think that's changed anything different. Accessibility is a big problem for Melee, that's true. The game was released before high-speed internet was available, and the game has never seen a release on newer hardware, of course, apart from PAL, which was the only patch it really had. This means that the younger audiences can experience the game in the same organic ways that players did back in the aughts. It also means that new gamers interested in Melee will have to need to buy an older console and hunt down a used copy of the game, or he does an online workaround in order to play it. That's true also. As a professional Melee player, I do use Dolphin along with NetPlay in order to play Melee. I almost never even have turned on my GameCube in the past few years, honestly, because of the PC emulation version is, in my opinion, far more convenient and superior. That's a lot to ask players nowadays, especially when so many top competitive titles are available for free on the PC. The funny part is, technically, weirdly enough, Melee is sort of available for free on the PC. I know there's legality involved with that, so on and so forth. There was some legal writing, I believe, that said that you could emulate a game as long as you legally owned a copy of it already physically. I read about that a while ago. I'm not sure if it still counts, but yeah, Melee discs are very hard to come by. They're expensive, and Nintendo doesn't really let's be honest, they don't really care about Melee anymore. So because of that fact, the community took it upon themselves to make their own workaround, which was basically get the ISO of the game, put the file online, run it through an emulator in Dolphin. And it's not just, basic vanilla Melee. They've turned it into an online marvel, right? With a much better netcode and online play than Ultimate by and far has to offer. So you can actually play online Melee now and get it set up, I would say, in less than a half hour. In its 19 years, Melee has been surprisingly resilient. It's not the first time Melee has had to go head-to-head with another Smash Bros. Title. Brawl, released on the Wii, and Smash 4 on the Wii U, were met with great fanfare at launch, only to fizzle out, clearing room for Melee to come back and surpass both in popularity. And this is a whole nother discussion to have as to why Melee lived on so long and Brawl and Smash 4, of course, died off. Brawl, Smash 4, and Smash Ultimate, they're true successors and sequels in a style of a fighting game, of a platform fighter. Melee is almost an orphan in that sense because of how different it is. And because it's that different, it's also that phenomenal. And that's why it has so much replay value, and it's aged so well. Melee's tenacity has been rooted in its frenetic and exciting gameplay. Even at Genesis 7, there were intense matches, top players pushing the competitive meta further, and a game that hasn't seen an update since its release at the start of Millennium. Sets between Leffen and Hacks were electric, two players operating at extremely high level of technical proficiency. And of course, if you click this link, it sends you to the actual match itself, which was a phenomenal match in itself. And if you haven't watched the top 8 for Genesis yet, I would highly recommend it. It was phenomenal, I would say, for both professionals and casuals alike. Players from all around the world fly to the long-running tournament series in Oakland in hopes of witnessing history. The first Genesis, which took place in a small town outside San Fran, I went to that Genesis, is remembered fondly. It cemented the U.S. as the best Melee region in the world. There was 290 entrants. Mango won, Armada got second, I got third, and it really set forth the pace of the competitive Melee meta for the rest of time, honestly. To this day, the storylines that emerged in the early years of Genesis persist. Armada beat Mango, which started the whole U.S. versus Sweden or U.S. versus Europe rivalry. Armada retired, and Leffen carried that torch, who was ranked number 2 in the recent rankings. And I believe he got 5th place at Genesis. Melee community still competes in local events and continues to doggedly use CRT televisions, sticking to the analog nature of the game. Again, yes, a lot of players do prefer CRT. There are alternatives which are being improved, modified each day, and there are some fixes now with memory cards, along with there's a monitor fix code that's being added to, I believe, certain memory cards. It allows the game to run a little more smoothly, a little more similarly to a CRT when playing on a monitor. So I will agree, though, that the community is resistant to that change because CRTs have been seen as this, true and tried best way to play Melee for a while, and it's sort of hard to change that from a community that's been so used to for a long time. While some argue that Melee is a solid game, as it ages a lot of players to flowchart the most optimal options, viewers witnessed a major upset over the weekend because Zane beat me in 2 sets, both winners and losers, close game 5 set in grands, which completely proves this point. Melee is not solved. Melee is nowhere near solved. Melee, as I was mentioned, is an analog game. It's very, very hard to solve an analog game. In a game like chess, or especially checkers is solved, right? Because there's no nuances of oh, my thumb went one tiny way to the other instead of this 1 millimeter here. It's just action, responded by action, which you have full control of. In Melee, I would never say that any pro player has 100% control of their character. There's a lot of room for error, but it's that human error which makes it so fascinating to watch. It's like watching a real-life boxing match, right? It's not just solved like a task playing it. It's humans can never be perfect, so let's push ourselves as far as we can get and enjoy the chaos that happens. And yeah, Zane with Marth beating me as Puff, which is traditionally one of my best matchups. It's a big upset because the meta's constantly being pushed. And yet the continuing evolution of the competitive meta made up enough to keep Melee's grassroots scene alive. Ultimate is neither Brawl or Smash 4. Very true. These games are very different. Sakurai wanted to speed up the game, make it more like Melee. Nintendo's been putting out balance patches, to prevent a stagnant metagame, an issue that plagued Smash 4, and along with a new DLC as well. The patching of the game I have definitely appreciated. For me, obviously, I'm a little bit selfish because it made Puff a lot better, but the patches have seemed to make sense for the most part so far. I think we're on 7.0 right now, And I think it's definitely helped the meta of competitive Ultimate. So, at least good on Nintendo for doing that. The data is hard to parse. G7 saw 1,100 entries for Melee and 1,600 entries for Ultimate. It's a little hard to compare viewership for both games as Ultimate streams went late into the night, past 1 a.m. on the East Coast. True, it was on a Sunday on the East Coast, but still, Ultimate started, I believe, 4 hours before that, or 5 hours, right? So 8 or 9 p.m. East Coast. 8 or 9 p.m. East Coast should still have a lot of time, but Ultimate's peak was only 90K, which was just shy of Melee's peak, which is 100K. So, I guess it's hard to say because of the schedule, but even still, schedule aside, that's such an amazing showing still for Melee. At G6 last year, Ultimate saw far more entrants, but the game had recently released and was still in its honeymoon period, which I mentioned earlier. That also raised viewership for Melee. Melee lacks support from Nintendo. The biggest point here across. It's always been up to the community to pay the burden of the cost. Prize money is allocated on tournament entry, and the winnings are hardly livable earnings. And if you don't believe me on this, you need to see the Big House 9 winnings. Because this is one of the biggest jokes ever. They have here mixed in the results of both Ultimate and Melee. But the winner for Ultimate got $400. And Mango winning the Big House 9, which had I think around 1,000 entrants and like 80,000 viewers, $3,600. Like similar events with viewership in that case for Fortnite, they're walking home with six figures, right? Even me, I played my ass off all weekend. I went home with a plane ticket price, right? Yeah. Melee has no dev support, so that's definitely a tough part. Only the best players, those sponsored by major esports like Team Liquid, Cloud9, Mango, can afford to play Smash full time, and given Ultimate's overall popularity at the moment, teams have been more willing to back Ultimate competitors over Melee players. Well, the teams always want to back the games which are more popular. Based on the cold, hard facts alone, Melee should be on its way out, but it's come back from the brink thanks to the documentary. Of course, Zane, he's considered a postdoc player, one of the new kids who came into the scene and started taking things by storm. Melee has benefited from a stable audience on Twitch and YouTube. In its earlier days, it got lots of airtime. Twitch loved, actually, there was a huge fan base within Twitch, a lot of people from the community who worked at Twitch. But over time, those employees have left, Blur and D1, of course, being the two that come to my mind. Twitch has become far more personality-driven, with individual streamers taking on more viewership than entire esports events. Streamers like Tim the Tapman, Dr. Lupo, before he left Shroud. These streamers, their entire brands and personalities of their own. Their streams alone are bigger than most esports that you see. Genesis has been a staple of Twitch for years. The streaming site features a competition of the final 8 players for both Melee and Ultimate on the front page, so they still want to show it off, surely bringing some curious viewers, 100K, but converting those viewers into fans and potential Melee competitors is a far more difficult next step. If Melee content creator practical tasks is to be believed, then the game will endure it, and it's all part of Melee's typical boom and bust cycle, one that occurs whenever a new Smash title comes out. I've been a big fan of Andrew's takes for a while, and he says this: the cycle never fails to occur. New Smash game comes out, Melee starts losing attendance and viewership. This happened for Brawl, Smash 4, and Ultimate. Melee is dying. This happened for Brawl, especially Brawl, Smash 4, and Ultimate. Sick Melee happens right beside new Smash game, Q Genesis 7. Fans of the new Smash game become Melee fans, and Melee is miraculously revived. Look, I always say, in a sense, where there's smoke, there's fire. But in a more positive light, right? If there's something really, really good that's accessible or still somehow available for people to try, even to watch, and they enjoy it, that is the answer as to why a game that's almost 20 years old has lasted so long. The game wouldn't be around if it wasn't so damn good. And I keep putting this point forward, and it's hard for a lot of people, especially I would say other people from the FGC who, for instance, going from Third Strike Street Fighter to then Street Fighter 4 to the Ultra, then Street Fighter 5, then Ultra, then Arcade Edition. Their games, they're similar enough that it's generally considered a best practice for the audience of a certain Street Fighter game all to move towards one, because it's not like the game is completely being ripped apart and shred apart like Melee and Brawl was. Brawl took Melee and ripped it to shreds. It just completely, it was a whole new thing. And like I said last time, I'll say it again, there has never been a sequel shift in any competitive fighting game like there has been from Melee to Brawl. And I will always stand by that. And Brawl was released, what, 07? Melee was 01. And it's caused this trend to happen. Nintendo released Smash 64 with no sequels. They shifted radically to Melee. Melee had no sequels either. They had PM. PM was a community mod of Brawl, which showed a sort of very interesting what if. And I still to this day think if Nintendo had been the ones to release PM, Melee would have been dead, just from the nature of things. And then they released Brawl. And Brawl, the way I see it, has had now 2 sequels. Brawl, Smash 4, Ultimate. And they will continue on that train. And every single new player of these games will drop the other games like flies and go on to the next ones, because that's the nature of things. And so until Melee receives a true sequel, Melee players will play Melee. And people will still keep watching because it's a phenomenal game. If that's the case, Melee will have an excellent 2021. And I really think it will as well. I think that the new Smash games, Smash 4, prove this especially, is definitely, it depends a lot on storylines. Melee has great storylines, but the gameplay itself is enough to carry it. But think about Smash 4, right? Sure, the game was laden with problems ahead, especially DLC like Bayonetta. But the storylines, right? Zero, the absolute best. Whenever he would drop a set, the entire world would stop, right? Whenever someone took a new set, or whenever you had these insane rivalries between regions, these insane comebacks, these circuits that would happen with 2GG and others. As a spectator for me, and I was known actually on Twitch when Smash 4 came out just to be someone who would spectate these tournaments all the time and just enjoy the living hell out of them. Ultimate, it's trying to have similar storylines, but it seems that it's almost MK Leo versus the field, and he loses every once in a while. But it feels like, there needs to be something new and fresh to happen to that game to really get more growth. I think Ultimate was like this. It just, it has new characters, so it's like, super high popularity, and then the game was out, and then it peaked a little bit, and went down a little bit. New DLC, down a little bit. New DLC, coming down. New DLC. So it's enjoying a little wave, whereas Melee, I would say, is right down here, only because, it's hard to compete with the newest Smash game. But, man, if Melee was in that position, if Melee was in that new game position where all eyes were on it, like, and screw it, with DLC, maybe, I don't want to say sacrilege, but maybe even patches, I don't know. The community for Melee is so dedicated that they would make it into one of the most flourishing esports ever made. Because that's what caused Melee to do what it is today. It was a game that's incredible, but the developer kind of left it behind. And now we sort of have to make do for it on our own and make things work for our own. So the community did it on their own, and they made an entire esport out of it without Nintendo. So let me know what you guys think. Those have been my thoughts on this article. It was definitely a better article than the one I read before. The one I read before was just laden with tons of inaccuracies and a lot of just just not correct information. This one was better. I already knew Emad Khan. He's made good content in the past before. So this one, it was sort of just understanding sort of phenomena as to what's happening, but I think the reasoning it might be a little misconstrued as well. So there's always a lot of things to consider here. But yeah, my response to the article: the reign is not over, because I'm gonna be here in 2030 making the same video after someone claims after 3 decades it's not over, and I will see you then when I'm the age of 36 and married or something. So we'll see. All right, guys.